speaker tonight is Vicki Hook, and she is a retired psychiatrist, MD. She has certain words that go along with her acronym. She can tell you all about them, cute words. She has an interesting life story. She actually moved here 2 years ago to the day that I did, July 1, 2015. And you know what? So many of you end up moving here because you have a child who gets kidnapped by someone or moves out here for some reason and has a baby, and then out you come. And that's what happened to Vicki. But she's going to tell you more about that. She's got a cool story, and she's asked to start out with her favorite song. She's only going to do one. We're not going to close with one. We're going to do two verses of what? Amazing Grace. And what page are we on? 378. So let's stand and sing with gusto, Amazing Grace.
Church history. Vicki Sue Bear was born on September 22nd, 1946 in Dansville, New York. I'm Vicki, not Victoria. My mother thought the name Victoria was pretentious. I always knew I was in trouble when she would look at me and say, Victoria Suzanne Bear. My first memory of going to church was with my mother's parents, my grandparents, Esther and Russell Gongaware, who took me to the Lake Grove Presbyterian Church in Youngstown, Ohio. I remember I had to be quiet that morning in church for a very long time. We moved from Youngstown, Ohio to Greenville, Pennsylvania when I was 6. My father and his brother had bought a diner called the Coffee Pot. The first time I went inside the restaurant, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. There was a candy rack that stretched from the floor to the ceiling just inside the front door, and the candy was all free for me. The restaurant was within walking distance of the local Lutheran-affiliated liberal arts college, Thiel. Spelled Thiel. Most people pronounce it Thiel. It's not. It's Thiel. Thiel's dining hall was closed on Sundays. We stayed open at the restaurant on Sundays so we could feed the students, which helped us pay our rent. My parents took me to the local United Church of Christ on Sunday mornings. It provided free babysitting for them while they worked. It was where many of my friends from school belonged, so they thought I would be happy to go. I would sit in the balcony, with my friends, and we would pass notes to each other and giggle and ignore the frowns from the grown-ups in the other pews. I was later confirmed in that church. I had been an only child for the first 10 years of my life. I was very excited when my mother became pregnant. The night she went into labor, I was taken to stay at our neighbor's home. When my father came to get me the next morning, he was crying. I had never seen my father cry before. My baby sister had died during the delivery. No one explained to me what had happened, but I knew. There had been a bird's nest in the bushes next to our driveway. There were eggs in the nest. I took 2 of the eggs out of the nest, and one of them broke. I put the other one back in the nest and didn't think any more about it until my sister died. I took one of God's creatures, so he took my sister, i.e. I killed my sister. I told no one about my sin. Several years later, I devised a plan to redeem myself. I would go to medical school and become the world's best obstetrician-gynecologist, and no other child would die during labor and delivery on my watch. It never occurred to me that I might have trouble getting into medical school. I lived at home and did my 4 years of undergraduate and got my BA degree from T.O. College. I applied to many medical schools in Pennsylvania and several out of state. I won't bore you with all the heartbreaking rejection letters and the hold my breath, maybe next year possibilities, but I prayed every day. I was out weeding in our yard one day in early September 1968 when my mother opened the door and said there was a woman on the phone who wanted to speak to me. It was Dr. Mary Ellen Hartman calling to tell me that I'd been accepted into the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and classes would start 2 days later. The medical school did not have dormitories. We had to find our own housing. I had a classmate from high school who was teaching in a suburb of Philadelphia. I called Sally and asked if I could sleep on her couch while I looked for an apartment, and she said yes. All the suitable housing near the school was already taken. 2 weeks after school started, Dr. Hartman called me into her office to ask if I'd found a place to live. I told her no. She gave me the Dreby, D-R-E-B-Y, family's name and phone number, which was divine intervention. The Dreby family invited me to live in the 3rd floor of their home and to go to church with them at the First United Methodist Church of Germantown. That congregation became family to me. One of the members was a pediatrician with her own clinic who allowed me to volunteer 1 night a week. That clinical experience enabled my survival through the first year of medical school, which was no picnic. I served as chair of the PPRC in that congregation. I also met my husband, Richard Jacobs, at church when mutual friends set us up to be greeters one Sunday. We got married a few years later, and I got pregnant the first time I didn't use birth control. My due date was February 7th, 1981. I was brushing my teeth the morning of January 1st, 1981, when my baby began kicking his way into the world. My immediate response to this premature arrival was fear. Remember, my sister, Beth Ann, had died during delivery. When I got to the hospital, I was informed he was coming out feet first, and so I had an emergency C-section. Todd, my son, weighed 5 pounds, 3 ounces, and was healthy. I thank God every day for this gift and for saving Todd again 28 years later when he ended up at St. Vincent's Cardiac Intensive Care Unit with 2 pulmonary emboli and hemorrhagic fluid around his heart. After my husband and I married and moved to a western suburb, I had to find a church closer to home. I began attending the Wayne United Methodist Church. I joined and became part of Women of Wayne. Wow. I was invited to join another women's group there called the GCBs, Good Christian Bitches. Our primary purpose was to have fun. My husband and I both retired and moved here on July 1st, 2015 to be close to our son and his family who live in Beaverton. My first week at Mary's Woods, I went to the concierge and asked her where the nearest United Methodist Church was located. I've been coming here ever since. Thank you for listening.
Well, I knew she was a pistol, but I didn't know she was that much of a pistol. Thank you, Vicki, for your honest story. And there's more that she didn't share with you. I'm hoping that she will. She's also a member of our OH, our Open Hearts, that meets here on every Thursday morning, and I'm